Good morning, everyone. For the record, today is September 2nd, 2025. It's 9:30 a.m. This is a City of Prescott Council Subcommittee on Water Issues. We'll start off with roll call, please.
Chair Good.
Present.
Member Fruworth.
Here.
Member Gambogi.
I am here.
All are present.
All right, we have a number of items on our agenda today, the first of which is approval of the July 1st, 2025 Council Subcommittee on Water Issues meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
And I'll second that. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We'll move on to item B, presentation and discussion regarding the 2022 Water Management Policy Budget, current residential, non-residential water budget overview for July 1, 2025 through August 21st, 2025.
Oh, good morning, Water Issues Subcommittee. I'm Brian Reese. I'm the Water Resources Manager here for the City of Prescott within the Community Development Department. I hope you all had a great Labor Day weekend. So, so as you have come to know, at each of these meetings, we provide you an update on what has happened in the budget cycle up until that point. In an amended 2022 water policies, guidelines 11 through 13, water budget is set on a semi-annual basis for residential and non-residential projects. The budget was set for July 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025 for residential projects at 25 acre-feet per year, and was also set for non-residential projects at 25 acre-feet per year. So the table up on the screen right now represents the residential projects that were approved between July 1st, 2025 and August 21st, 2025. There were 3 projects on that list. All of them were administratively approved. They're all single-family residential. The total water for this period is 0.7 acre-feet out of the 25, leaving 24.3 acre-feet for the remainder of the period in the budget.
Well, it's pretty simple. Does any member of the council have any questions regarding that?
Sorry, I'm trying to, there we go. Thank you. Okay, so in our second table represents non-residential projects. As you can see, there was 2 non-residential projects approved in the period. Both of them were under 1.5 acre-foot, so they were administratively approved per code. So we had a coffee shop and an office building complex. The total water approved was 1.26 acre-feet, leaving a remainder of 23.75 acre-feet. I guess that probably should be 7.4 acre-feet in the budget for this period. And then the last table we have for you, per code, any water that is subject to existing contract, it doesn't go through the budgetary process, is approved through those contracts. So we provide this table right here to show projects that have moved through that track for water. So at this point, we had several projects that were approved for single-family residential. As you can see, most of them, I'm trying to see if there's anybody that wasn't. It looks like all of them were approved through single-family residential at this point. And so that water totaling in existing contract was 1.73 feet, which is the water that was approved through the existing contract up in this period from July 1st through August 21st. So that's a summary of the water that has been administratively approved through this period. If you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to try to answer.
Pretty simple. Any questions? No, Ted? Well, that was an easy one. No formal action. That was just a discussion and presentation.
Correct.
Okay, so I guess we can move on to item C, approval of water 25-045 water service application submitted by Dalke Design Group on behalf of owner Jim Thomas. Where's Jim? There you are. Location APN 103-20-598P, comprising 6.97 acres. We'll skip the rest of it. Recommendation, we'll go ahead and make the presentation and we'll look at action.
Okay, I'll make it nice and short. It's a pretty simple project. Over at the mall, this proposed water service application is for 12 temporary apartment units that would go behind the Aspire building, adjacent to the existing ball court or tennis courts on the building. As you can see, it's redlined or highlighted in the red line on this vicinity map on the screen at this point in time. So the project consists of 12 apartment units. Each unit is assumed to use 0.12 acre feet per year. That value is from the water resource management model based on the average uses for small apartment type units. The total residential demand is 1.44 acre feet. Moving forward, on the screen now is, and in your agenda packet for this, was a site plan showing the location of the units and the proposed landscaping. In total, the proposed landscaping is 0.4 acre feet. Landscaping will follow the Land Development Code requirements for drought-resistant planting. That allows us to use the 1.5 acre feet per acre from ADWR's recommendation for that type of planting, and that would bring us to a total of 2.04 acre feet per year for this project. So the units are shown here on the vicinity map, temporary apartment units, casita complex, total demand for the buildings, 1.44 acre feet. Estimated demand for the landscape, 0.6 acre feet. Previous usage, none that needs to be subtracted from that total. And that gives us our total demand for the project of 2.04 acre feet. So that concludes my short presentation on this. As noted, Mr. Thomas from Aspire Sports is here. So if you have any questions for him relating to the project and anything from me, I would be happy to try to answer that for you.
Well, thank you very much. Jim, you want to come up and give us an idea what your plans are for this set of casitas? I mean, I'm pretty familiar with what your plans are, but for the record, being able to describe your expanded use of the indoor facilities that you have at Aspire, and we'll still have that access road between the outdoor pickleball courts and the casita boundary, right?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. As you know, Aspire Sports, it's always been my vision to be a destination resort that people could come to in Prescott and enjoy everything that Prescott has to offer, including indoor sports, and get healthy and have fun. Strike the word apartment. That is not what this is, even close. This is a short-term, I would say, more like an Airbnb situation where people will come for 3 or 4 days, stay there, and enjoy everything we have to offer at Aspire. So it's short-term, less than, 2 weeks that people would stay in these units, and then they would be able to utilize everything we have inside. We don't want to plant. We're going to do synthetic turf. We won't have any grass. We wouldn't do anything like that. We might plant a few trees. That's what we're going to do to make it nice. But basically, I think, as you already know, there's a 144 apartment complex going next to us. And so I think when that starts to be built, there won't be any access that way. Yeah. So all the access into the Pine Ridge Marketplace will be from the front and the side, if you will. But they once they get over there to the back side, they won't be able to come through there where that apartment complex goes up.
I just have to change the way I get over there to Aspire.
That's right. That's right. You'll have to park in the front.
So are you going to be kind of marketing these casitas in connection with your plans for tournaments and things like that?
Exactly.
And I imagine the people that utilize it the first time around will be so impressed, and they might want to come back and bring their family for other uses.
Right.
For 3, 4, 5, or 6 days.
And I would add these are more high-end units. I think Prescott has a lot of 3-star situations with hotels. This is going to be a little bit more upscale, so more like a 4-star situation, but a whole family could stay there because it's could be a 2-bedroom or a 1-bedroom unit that has a kitchen and a nice outdoor covered patio that they can enjoy the views of the mountains and really, it's just a little bit nicer than a hotel room, if you will.
In close proximity to Augie's too, right?
That's right. That's right. Augie's is doing very well.
Free appetizer if you book into the
That's
casitas.
right. We could throw that in there for sure.
Well, it sounds like a great project, Jim. Any other questions from subcommittee? Nope. Well, congratulations. Good luck with that. I'm sure it's going to be a big success.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, we need to make a motion. I move to recommend forwarding WSA 25-045 to council for approval.
Second.
All in favor, just indicate by saying aye.
Aye, aye, Captain.
Passes 3-0.
See how much faster it was when we just say aye? Okay. We'll move on to item D, presentation and discussion regarding an update on the long-term water management plan.
Good morning. We're joking around in the front row a little bit, but let's go. We're glad to be here today, and thank you, Subcommittee, for listening to this brief update on the long-term water management plan. I'm Leslie Grazer, Water Resource Project Manager. Let's get started. So we're focusing on 2 items today, the outreach that's been started and kind of working its way through the system, so to speak, and then draft 2024 baseline water supplies. Okay, so, let's see. Have to have fun with these things. Okay, so I'm starting over here. We built a project overview for the project itself, so the public could see where we're going to help align ourselves, the group that's working on this project. From there, we needed a landing place for it, so we built the water resource management page has the long-term management plan section to it, as well as Participate Prescott was built for the public as well, where we keep the information sheets I just showed here, and maybe, seems like there's a delay, and there. Okay, once we had those in place, then we were ready to launch the Facebook piece. So this was the first Facebook piece that we launched up here, and it would drive the community to the city's website and Participate Prescott again, so they could follow along with us is how we started this conversation. Since that time, just last week, we launched the second information sheet for the project, so it's the 2024 baseline on demands. As you recall, our last meeting in July, we presented this spreadsheet, or this this portion of the project to you in graphs and spreadsheets and things like that. Once again, we cleaned it up really nicely so that it would be clear for the public as to what demands look like. We're not done with this piece yet. There's more happening behind the scenes. We're really digging into the commercial side so we can have a better understanding of what's happening there. And digging in means running getting our sectors figured out. You know, where is your construction? Where are your services? How much are they using in that non-residential category? Talking to our community development folks and looking at land development code to see how they categorize these different non-residential uses, as well as talking to economics and tourism department to find out how they look at it as well. So that's the gist on outreach. So we'll continue to see this process where we prepare something.
Councilman
Time
Gambogi?
out.
Leslie, you have two pie charts there. One is by accounts and one is by usage, huh?
By volume.
Yeah, so what could we conclude from that?
This was what we presented last time we were here, and this was very important to us. So although what we're looking at more so is the blue part of the pie, where you have a big chunk of residential accounts. And then you can see how much that volume attributes to that use. Then when you look at the commercial, which is in the green on the left-hand side, it's a smaller chunk account-wise, but on the right-hand side, it shows there's a heavier volume use, and that's what we want to dig into more. But this information sheet is available on our website, on Participate Prescott, and the future ones will land there too. The intent is that today's material that you'll be seeing on the baseline of supplies, that will be worked into another outreach piece, and it'll go on to these spaces. I think what we've learned so far that may be notable a lot, you can pull your analytics from, Facebook and from your websites and things like that, but we had 20 downloads of the first information sheet. So that's not a high number, but it showed us that we were having some activity. So we're going to track these numbers as to if we're reaching the public in a meaningful way or if we need to make some adjustments. So I can move on from outreach and get into the baseline supplies. So as you're aware, there's 3 supply types: groundwater, surface water, and reclaimed water. We wanted to look at this in 2 perspectives. One is the physical supply itself, but then also how it's legally categorized. So that gives us a different picture as we'll walk through, and I'll explain that a little bit more. When I say how it's legally categorized, that means in your decision order from the Department of Water Resources, you have the ability to use your, what we used to call alternative supplies of surface water and reclaimed water to offset how much groundwater you need to pump. In reality, when you're pumping your wells, you're predominantly pumping groundwater, but you are infusing water back into the system through these other mechanisms, other supply types. So first, we're looking at this from the physical standpoint. How much water did the city pump from the wells in 2024? How did that volume compare to the 10-year period? And I should pause here just a minute, which is kind of a strange interruption point at this point, but I want to let you know that the demand work that we're doing and the supply work, what you're seeing today, has been done by your consultant, Herb Dishlep. We work with him closely, and then I convert things over into these outreach pieces. But we'll make a note of where this data comes from and basically what it's telling us. We like to say that this baseline work is basically the foundation of the house. We need to know where we stand now, and then we'll build from there. So how much in 2024 on the slide you can see, see it's 7,200, and I believe it says 82 or 92. It's hard to read that.
Councilman Gambogi, you have another question?
Yeah, how would you explain that big, long bar on 2020?
We've looked at that ourselves quite a bit because we knew that question was going to come, because that one does kind of stick out, doesn't it? So we definitely had a shift in our policy in 2019, and so that might have changed things a little bit. We also had a community and a nation in pandemic, so a lot more people were home, and maybe there was a lot more gardening going on, a lot more outdoor water use. So We don't have an exact explanation, but that one does stick out. But to your point, when we see things like that, we go back and check the data to make sure that we don't have something wrong. So that means we checked our metering data, we checked everything that we filed with the state of Arizona, and that's important here too. Nope, let's see if I back up, get the right button. Down here, I always put our source data so that you know where we're taking this from. It's important for us, it's important for you, and it's important for the public to know where the data is coming from. So on average, you can see what the average has been over that 10-year period, the 6,984 acre feet, and you can see that we're, starting to trend upward a little bit. Okay, next slide. Looking at this from a percentage. So now we're looking at kind of that legal side a little bit. So what happened when we were doing our pumping in 2024? So we look at the last line on this chart, the groundwater, it was 68% was pumped as groundwater, 16% was recovered surface water, and legally 16% was recovered effluent. These things are important, and I'll reiterate it later, is that you made the effort as a city to use your reclaimed supplies to offset the amount of groundwater pumping that you were going to do. You purchased Watson and Willow Lake reservoirs in order to offset how much pumping you're doing. So you're trying to do replenishment while you're also pumping water supplies for your community. But the bottom line is, we're not serving anyone directly surface water. We're not serving anyone directly reclaimed supplies for potable use.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question when I was looking at this over the weekend. It would be really interesting to also overlay kind of like what was our snow and monsoon seasons per year, because the going up, the hitting the 60s, the 50s in surface water, and then that correlates with the amount of groundwater that we're taking. I just think when you're trying to educate the public about the cycles and the drought that we find ourselves in now, in not only 2024 as well as 2025, I think it's helpful information if that would be possible. Or am I making the wrong conclusion about monsoons
No, you're
and
making
snow?
me smile quite a bit, because I used to keep records for the city where I did compare, especially our surface water side, to our precipitation cycles. We can re-engage that effort. Again, as I said, I have it in older spreadsheets, but that in 2 slides, we'll talk about surface water supplies and how they are reliant or dependent on how our snowpacks and our rainfall looks. So yes, we can do that. Okay, next slide. Now, the city wells are located in 2 areas. So we have a Chino Valley well field and an airport well field. The question is, what percentage of the total water withdrawn was pumped from those areas in 2024, and how does that compare to the 10-year period? So we're looking at the last 2 bars on the chart, and you can see that we're still predominantly pumping from the Little Chino and less from the airport. This is nothing new. I hope I'm not boring anybody. We bring these things to you on a fairly regular basis with the annual water withdrawal and use report that Brian has been presenting. But you can see over time there was a ramp up in the airport well field. So we keep moving upwards. But if you want to look at the breakdown as a percentage, in 2024 it was 80% from the Chino Valley area and 20% from the airport area. Okay.
Yeah, I would have expected that the airport well would have dropped quite a bit more since we shut it down.
One of them, yeah. So you're still using 3 and 2. So 2, I think, is a fairly stable and reliable well.
Yeah.
3 is really good. It's 5 that you have
So
offline
it did
right
drop, but not significantly.
now. Yeah. Okay, on your next slide, surface water supplies are available from Granite Creek and Willow Creek, and they're highly variable depending on precipitation and runoff, or even snowpack. How much surface water was captured, recharged, and then recovered in 2024, and how did that compare to the 10-year period? So you can see in 2024, as Councilman Fruworth had mentioned, we had a very dry winter. We've had a fairly dry summer and delayed monsoon. So you can see how it changes. This is what has always been challenging for the city as to how to manage these reservoirs to maximize their storage capacity and have them ready for recharge purposes. But you have to have the water coming in. And so we look at this each year, and I believe Brian works now very closely with Water Ops, where we had discussions in the past where, like, how are we going to manage water delivery, surface water deliveries from our recharge or from our surface water bodies to our recharge facilities this year? What is that looking like? So, and you can see that our trend, 2,593. What we're looking for is having on average 1,391, because that's part of our decision order of how much water supplies we feel we can on average send. So our average will obviously look different if you slice this different ways. Okay, the next slide. Now we're looking at our reclaimed supplies or effluent supplies, also used for recharge and recovery only. So how much effluent was pumped is annual recovery, and how much was stored for long-term storage credits, and how do these compare for the trend time frame that we have. So here again, it's important to know that we do direct delivery of reclaimed supplies to certain customers like golf courses and the industrial user that we have. In this presentation, we're speaking about when we took our reclaimed water, delivered it over to our recharge facility, recharged it, what did we decide to do in terms of recovery for the legal side of things? This isn't recovery for potable use. It's not recovery for non-potable use. This is just the legal side again. So you can see what's happened over the years. In 2024, you can see the split where in the solid is the effluent recovery. We recovered that on paper as part of what we can do through the legal side of things with the Department of Water Resources. And then the long-term storage credit means that we decided to keep that in storage, and we're banking that for future use. And these are details that you'd get.
Councilman Gambogi.
Leslie, how would you explain the drop in 2024?
The drop in my first statement would be, because it's been dry, we were sending a lot of the supply over to the golf courses for non-potable use to keep them green, and for the industrial user. Whatever was left, we could recharge and recover, or we could put into the storage account. So yeah, there is a change there, but you can see 2020, 2021, 2018, you're just gonna have fluctuations. But if we stop and look at this, and this is what your team is trying to do, we're trying to look at all your supply types and then bring back information as to how you might want to consider managing your supplies into the future. But this really is just step one of getting your baseline information. But these things that you're pointing out are important. There's a choice here. Oh, did you want to add something?
Just real quick, Leslie, also to if we have wetter monsoon seasons, snowpack seasons, we end up getting a little bit more infiltration. We'll get infiltration into our sewer systems, and we end up treating more water. It's one of the things we're looking at with the long-term water management plan. It's a supplemental water supply, but at a very big cost to our to the energy and to our systems in our sewer. So you might be seeing some of that reflect in 2024 also.
Yeah, it might be helpful to add the total precipitation for the year in each year, and that way we can kind of relate it to the dry years, the kind of the arid years, and the wetter years. So that probably would correlate pretty well with the results on that chart, wouldn't they?
I'm happy to put it on, and we'll see what it tells us. That's part of the data and putting different data pieces together. As I mentioned, I kept files on that for many years, and so we can reactivate those. And I would usually just put the precipitation in as a line. So the bar graph would then also have a line graph as well. Okay, and then the
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question or a point as we're looking at this for policy's sake. I love a big green, gorgeous golf course myself, but the amount of public comment that's happening because of the what's happened at Lynx Lake, for example, and people are very grateful for what we're doing to keep our other lakes looking good, for them to be able to have some family and activities. But I do think one of these things, if we continue to have this kind of pattern of lower snowpacks, lower monsoons, we're going to have to take a look at how green do our I'm not saying eliminate grass. I'm saying, do we have to have it as wide? Do we have, can we look at other kind of xeriscaping and things that other courses in the state have been looking at? And so it's just one of those things. I just want to plant a seed. Not that I really want to go there, but I just think there comes a point that we need to be recharging enough water to offset our groundwater withdrawal. And as long as we can keep the sport fun, both sports, water and golfing, I think it's a better balance. But right now we're just kind of reacting in what we're doing every single year. But I think it's going to have to be part of our strategy and our policy if we find ourselves in that trend. So just a thought.
Absolutely. We will be coming back around with some of those discussions. It's going to come from your conservation team, how we look at turf a little bit more. Thankfully, over the years, you've had conservation efforts at your own golf course where you have removed maybe non-necessary turf, changed roughs, some different things that didn't limit the play or affect the play. So that's important. As water resource management, we're trying to look across the board everywhere. What does fire department need? What does the recreation side need? And so that's what we're in the midst of. So that's very good
And we
point.
can add the fact that Joe Baines, when he was head of the Parks and Recreation Department, rebuilt a lot of that irrigation system out on the golf courses. Prior to that, there was a lot of standing water, a lot of wasted irrigation water. So I think we'll probably start seeing the benefits of that over the coming years.
Right. We have to strike a balance, and that's what we try to do. Over in water resource management, we have partnered quite a bit with rec services where we can remove turf that is maybe not really necessary, replace it with nice native plants. As I said, work with the golf course, our own, but there's other golf courses that are not under the city's ownership, and I know that they work hard to keep an eye on their water use as well. So thank you for that, and we'll keep adding that as we work along. The last point on this chart is that the recovered effluent and long-term storage is a choice. So the city can choose when they report out how much they could recover all the water that they recharged that was reclaimed that year. They could choose to put all of it into a long-term storage account. So what you're seeing in 2024 is a balance was struck where half went one direction and half went the other. But from a management standpoint, there might be choices in the future to do things just as were done in 2024 or do them differently. Or it might change year to year. Okay, so next chart was, I moved this over to looking at this regionally. So our consultant Herb Dishlip dug into the data from the department. So once again, your source data is coming from the Arizona Department of Water Resources dashboard. The water withdrawn from Prescott's wells in 2024 that was neither categorized as surface water nor recovered effluent was legally categorized as groundwater. Prescott's,
Councilman Gambogi has a question.
yes, sir.
This slide's pretty eye-opening. As compared to the total, we're a small portion of that. Who else is in the AMA that's drawing on groundwater?
Quite a few, and if you don't mind, if I can move to the next slide, I can break that out for you, and then we'll hop back. So we did look at that. There's City of Prescott in the red. There's other municipals, so that in the AMA, that would be your Prescott Valley, Chino Valley, Dewey Humboldt. You have your domestic or exempt wells. That means a private well, basically, pumping 35 gallons per minute or less is exempt from having to report to the state. We broke out irrigation. Well, we didn't, the state does. And then industrial, because this is an AMA level look. So that is who's kind of playing within this data set. Backing up to this one, you're correct. We wanted to look at just groundwater. So when I showed you the chart of the percentages, 16% surface water, 16% reclaimed, and then the remainder, that was groundwater. So if we look at this from a legal standpoint, yes, there's what I think it says 4,000, 811, correct me if I'm wrong, or we'll just call that about right, as compared to the other water users in the AMA. So as you know, your long-term management plan and specifically your strategic plan from the council said we want to talk regional. So we're working that into the data set as well. We, meaning Herb, is doing a lot of the heavy lifting on this one.
Leslie, how do they calculate that? If you've got over 10,000 exempt wells in the AMA and they're not metered, how can they calculate how much water is being pumped by those exempt wells?
I know this had been a tricky one over the years, and thankfully I did work for the Department of Water Resources at one time. I don't know if they exactly do this the same way, but from a modeling standpoint, they would take the wells that they have them classified. You have to register your well as non-exempt or exempt. So the ones that are exempt, I think they knock off the ones that are labeled as stock or something else like that. So they're just looking for that domestic picture the best they can based on the records they have. And then the modeling team, the groundwater flow modeling team, would assign half an acre foot per well. And that's how they did it at one time.
So they just assumed if there is an exempt well, it'll be using an average number of
Half an acre
feet
foot
per year.
Yeah,
So that's, yeah.
because
it's
they're not
measured,
required to
it's just
report. Yeah,
Estimated.
it's an estimated number. Yeah. Half an acre foot per well that's deemed by the department to meet the category of domestic exempt. And this is, only as good as the database that houses this information. So if somebody, say, sold their property, it went from a domestic property, something along Gurley, it was once a private residence, and it went into commercial. Unless the real estate agent and the other people involved in the transaction changed the use, it might be different. So I'm saying this as there's nuances, but it's not that I'm saying there's anything wrong. It's all data sets. You have to kind of figure out.
Councilwoman Furworth
good.
had another question.
Yes,
Thank you,
ma'am.
Leslie. I think everything you just educated us to is really important, that you have these things documented on the slides for the public. Because, for example, the last 3 years, I just looked at 22, 23, 24, we went from being 13.1% of the problem to 12.3% of the problem to 36% of the problem. And, we're not the only ones that ended up having to deal with the fact that there was no snowpack and rain in 2024. So the assumption of the half an acre foot for, is probably not a great assumption when it's a year that is low on rain and snowpack. And so I just think all the education you just gave us, if you don't have that footnoted on here, the public or our peers, municipalities, are going to start making assumptions about us that may not be fair.
Okay,
Well,
point.
especially when we know we've got almost 1,000 exempt wells that have gone dry. But they're applying an assumption that those wells are using water when the wells are dry. So these are really very widely variable estimates. And it's really hard to draw conclusions from them or to implement policy based upon those assumptions.
Right, and we don't have authority over exempt wells. So even though they're in the AMA, they're not in your own service area. You might make certain choices with long-term planning, but I think it's better than having a zero there. So if they're estimating about half an acre foot per well that they deem as domestic exempt, at least it gives us a data point to work from. Once again, we're talking foundation. We're trying to get some baseline discussions. But to your point, Councilman Fruworth, this is the discussion that will help build the information sheet on this piece of information for the public so that we do deliver. Those of us who work in this all the time, sometimes we know it, but conveying it properly so we answer questions and not make more questions is important. Yeah.
I think just to build on the bottom, what the mayor just said to me, you're comparing on a chart actual Prescott groundwater volume with forecasted, estimated rest of the AMA volume. So you're comparing apples and oranges, which is the best picture we can come up with.
Well,
But again, it's estimated, it's forecasted. It's not necessarily as accurate as the blue bar here is.
well, let me make a correction there. So all the information that's coming from the dashboard, from the Department of Water Resources, everybody else who is non-exempt and has to file their annual water withdrawal and use report, they are documented. That's a documented number. The only estimate that we're talking about was, you asked me about the exempt wells. So that's the only one that they have to do the best they can to come up with some number that they can use in planning purposes, and it affects us too. But it tells us, once again, the key point here is that the city has made investment in their reclaimed supply system. They've made investment in their surface water systems, and that was to offset their groundwater use. There's not many others in the AMA
That can say that.
can do that and say
I
that.
just
So-
think, again, your
and it's not
hatched
an-
bar, it would be great if you could say for the rest of the AM, here's PV, here's Chino Valley, here's Dewey, like everyone else who's true. And then there's this little hashtag estimate up on the top.
Yeah, we can do.
That would at least let us compare apples and apples and see the trends as we go down, because we've had a great, do the other towns go down as well? I just think we're comparing apples and oranges and trying to see something, and I'd like to compare as many apples as possible to each other. Thank you.
That sounds good. And this is the kind of our first pass and just getting that baseline data to you. And then, as I said, with the demand, we're digging more into certain areas. In this piece, we can dig more into it, and charts are easy to, manipulate with Excel and get the different color schemes and folks identified. But I think really what we're getting at too is, which I think is my last slide today, is this piece. Pie charts are always helpful. So when we look at Prescott's pumping that is legally classified as groundwater, not recovered surface water or reclaimed water supply, the upper pie chart shows how the city compares to others that pump groundwater in the AMA. So you can see the other municipalities, but they're lumped. We didn't pull apart, and said, okay, this is Prescott Valley, and this is Chino Valley, and this is Dewey Humboldt. But we meaning Herb, looked at this and said, okay, well, we're focusing on the city because we're focusing on our long-term management plan first, and what kind of things we can bring to you to discuss for your future. Of course, that plays into the bigger picture as well. So what it looks like there is that when you look at us from a groundwater standpoint, our number's about 26%. When you look at the lower pie chart, that shows all the pumping. So when we pump and we look at data from the Department of Water Resources, it looks like we're pumping 37%. But once again, when you look at through the lens of what legally you can do and how you can classify water and what your efforts have been as a city to reduce your groundwater pumping, you can see your number comes down. So I'm looking at the red piece to the red piece.
There's another related issue that I've talked to the city manager about, which I think we need to start measuring the amount of volume that comes out of our bulk water distribution facility over on 6th Street. Because if we have more wells going dry in the county, and those users now have put tanks on their property, and they're contracting to have water delivered, and the water's coming from our bulk water distribution facility, that may be one of the reasons why that blue line continues to grow, because even though the estimates that coming out of ADWR are just estimates, but if those dry wells are now being filled up with tanks coming from our bulk water distribution facility, then we can expect that the blue line will continue to go up as more and more wells go dry. So I think being able to have that in a chart so that we can also see how that amount of volume is going up, to what extent, it's important to know.
Absolutely. So thankfully you do on your water ops side, they do track that volume use. People have to pay for that water, so they know what's leaving that facility. So we can pull that one together as well. And it also applies to your non-potable too. All your supply types are going to be very important into the future. So you want to know where your non-potable is going to. That's also being purchased and moved for different uses other than your golf courses and for your recharging aquifer efforts that you make. So that is the end of my presentation today. If you have any additional questions or something comes up later, let me know. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Leslie.
Whoops.
All right, we'll move on to item 3E, presentation and discussion regarding the updated water conservation rebate program. Tracy.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. I appreciate the opportunity to be here again today. So, yes, we're at an exciting time with not only being able to make our rebate program more accessible to our customers, but we really wanted to pivot, save money, make it easier to use, and with all this demand management and long-term planning work that we're doing, really have a better understanding of how much we're saving. And so this is sort of the first several chapters in the work that we're doing here. So again, some of the goals that we had with what I'm going to present today were to make the rebate process more understandable to our customers, meaning they have less questions, less time that they have to, give us a jingle and plan those conversations, which would increase our success rate with our applications, because usually if there's a delay or they submit something that doesn't qualify, well, this will help with that. Administrative time is key. We have a limited staff, and my time on water conservation is far less than I would love it to be, and so wherever we can be efficient, that's important. And then again, looking at the accuracy of the information we have in that program. We have data all the way back to 2016. And through this time, it's been saved and processed in a lot of different ways. And so we want to be able to use that with our long-term planning. So the first thing that we did was we updated and renewed the rebate section of our website. And so what I have here are a couple of screenshots. Hopefully you've been to that website. I've simplified the links. I'm always looking at ways to reduce barriers, make things simpler for our customers. So let's give them links they can remember. So prescottwater.com/rebates. No hyphens, no dashes, nothing in the middle there. We've updated and added, let's see if I can do what Leslie did. I've not, just hold it.
Councilman Gambogi had a question.
Yes, sir. Top button.
You haven't got there yet, but there's a little blue box on the bottom that says Prescott is partnering with the Friends of the Verde to offer up to $15,000 per applicant in grants. How would an applicant add up to $15,000?
That's an exciting question. We did put an ad in our last utility bill. Hopefully you got that. And so you can click that button and go right to their webpage to read the details. But in a nutshell, the Friends of the Verde applied for a grant specifically wanting to bring this program to the Prescott area this year. And they have 3 cycles of grant money. We just hit the first one, which was August 31st. So that's the first pot of money. You can reapply. I didn't know this initially. They encourage, go ahead, if you have a really big project, you want to do a lot on your property, apply a couple of times, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So second cycle is October 31st, and the final cycle will be the end of March. So if there's any money remaining after the first 2 cycles 2 cycles, individuals and businesses can apply for that. So
But this is per applicant, right?
this is per applicant for them.
So how many toilets would you have to replace to add up to $15,000?
I didn't do that math, but I can get back to you.
1,206.
So what we're doing is we're working with the applicants. Homeowners can get up to $5,000 per cycle from the Friends. Businesses can get up to $10,000. If there's an overlap, for example, let's say someone wants to do a rain garden, they can build into their application to the Friends what they're planning to seek from the city. So they can utilize our rain garden, they can utilize our controller application. They will say, okay, we're applying for approximately $600 from the city of Prescott. They will have already talked to me. You know, they will, when they come through for their rebates, they will provide a copy of the grant, the approved grant application. And then, you know, we can make sure that we're not double counting, but we're enhancing each other. And so everything that's enhancing will get processed with those funds from the city as well.
Councilwoman Furworth.
So I love this. So it makes me say, how do I take advantage of this? Which makes me say, who are the right people that we should be engaging, not just waiting for them to read the newspaper or read their bill, but actually going after some businesses who have old toilets and old washing machines and old everything.
Yes. The first steps of that have happened. I'm thrilled that our new education coordinator at the Nature Center reached out to us. And so I went to their property. I went to that event this weekend before last. Didn't stop talking with people. It was a combination of owner conversations and HOA conversations. So everyone who was there that I spoke with, I would say 75%, we were talking on both of those levels. So here's what you can do as a resident. And yes, please share this with your HOA. HOAs could qualify $30,000, you know, upgrade your irrigation systems, do turf removal, all sorts of projects. So that's the first round that we're doing. PSAs are coming next. So we'll get some public PSAs, and so hopefully both residents and businesses. And then we'll see what we can do with some announcements. We spoke with a business that works with multifamily a couple of months ago when this was just getting started. They're very interested in working in Prescott to do efficiency work, and so they're very aware of this. So I'm hoping they are specifically presenting to our multifamily folks as they engage across the city of Prescott.
The only other idea I have for you to engage with would be the Prescott Chamber of Commerce, because they have the dollars from CDBG to do some upgrades of people's homes. We have a lot of aged people living in really aged homes.
Right.
And I'm wondering if they were aware of this, if we could also help with replacing water fixtures while they're in there. So
Yeah.
just another idea.
Absolutely, yes. No, it's hot on the list for really getting some more information out for this October cycle. So yes, a really unique and exciting opportunity. I hope that they come back next year too. So here we've got the basic updates. And then we broke it into 2 pages so you're not constantly scrolling. We've updated the terms with what was approved by council, a little bit more clarifying language. Again, clean link. And at the top, you know, this is where people will get their print versions of the documents if they prefer to use print. So we updated the standard application to make it very clear, both with the form they send in as well as the documentation sections for each item, what the rules and guidelines are. So we put more information. We've also taken an opportunity to highlight Eye on Water down there on the application this time to encourage people to go to the city website and read about that. So first steps on Eye on Water. One of the challenges we've had is people really understanding what to do with turf. And of course, rain gardens are complex. And so we have a pre-application. And so this specifies what it is that's required for turf and rain gardens and breaks it out from everything else, provides them a workspace. They send this in as a first step before they get started. We start the conversations. By the time the applications come to us, it should be easy. We'll slide them right through. The city will be happy and our customers will be happy as well. And then thanks in large part to Josh Van Berken, is that how you say it? Buskirk. Josh Van Buskirk, IT, he has been tremendous on this project. We shifted our entire rebate program from a third-party software where all that data in all kinds of forms was uploaded as is, and we were spending over $10,000 a year with no support just for them to host the system. Very, very difficult functionally for our customers and for us. So since the beginning of the year, we have taken all of that data out. We have our own copies of it. We are cleaning it up in large part thanks to Marty in our department. We're about 75% to cleaning up 4,400 applications across all of these years so that the data makes sense. He created the online rebate form that we have now. It's hosted by the city at no additional software or management expense. It's using our GIS software tools. It's been a lot of fun being able to just jump in and add things when we need to or clarify things that we need to on this application. We have a lot of pieces, points for customers where they usually get stuck and have questions. So all of that is built in. So you can simplifies it, a lot of drop down boxes so you can't go wrong and head down the wrong path. And then on our side, Josh has also designed the administrative dashboards. And so this is just a glance at what sort of the basic day-to-day administration page looks like. Very simple to get in there. The attachments are uploaded by customers. We go in, we click dates. There are auto messages that go to our customers when we receive, when we approve, when we need more information. All very quick and efficient, and space in there to document when we get to the point of cutting a check to our customer. We also document that Munis number in our system now as well. And then there's the mega system, which only a few of us have access to. So if there are a few things that if we need to go in and make tweaks, this is the full-blown GIS screen that Josh and I know. And then eventually we'll have a couple of others. So when we hit the lottery, someone else will be able to take this part over as well. And so just to highlight on the importance of the data, like I said, actually 4,700 rebate entries. That includes some things like giving away shower heads or some of the on-site work that was done a number of years ago. But that's a lot, 19 years worth of data. But a lot of things were messy. I give a fake example here. They squished up names and products. And so there's no clean way to really understand across time how much water we've been saving. So we're cleaning that up. We're making sure we can associate accounts with properties so that when we reach those caps, it's very easy to understand that. We can understand how often people are participating, and making sure we have this for not only the historical, but looking at what is accurate. And I'll show that on the next slide here. So for example, as you point out, commercial toilets, those get flushed a lot more than our residential toilets. And so setting up our system on the customer side and on the back side to understand better numbers for how much water is saved per fixture or when that turf comes out. So this is a huge advantage. And this is just, this is very technical, but this is the screen that Josh and I work through and are working through for what our types are and what those savings are. And I'm doing a little research to make sure that all those numbers make sense. That data will all get uploaded back fresh and new with new numbers in October. So that as we come to the end of the year, we'll be in a good position to not only report on 2025, but to take a look back. And if my understanding is correct, next year is 20 years of this program. And so it's a great time to really showcase what this has done and make recommendations and suggestions as to how it can increase its impact positively on the water use that we have here in the city. So just a moment of celebration, listing the folks who are involved. This is a very large process. We are doing check cutting now as well. So I want to mention all the people who are not new to the city, but new in this role of helping us make sure this program is successful.
Excuse me, Tracy, but Councilman Gambogi had a question.
I just wanted to compliment you. Good job.
Thank you so much. And as I said, this is chapters 1 and 2. We are intending to work with the communities, get the word out. We've been communicating. What I've been working on are resources for native plants, and plantings. Where in the world do I get plants if I want to do this work? And how can I go about it? So it's kind of behind the scenes and not ready quite yet, but we will have more resources to make the process simpler for our customers, and we'll be out there in the stores with the fixture questions and partnerships too. That's all I have today.
Tracy, have you looked at commercial grade washers? Because I know, speaking for myself, we had an LG front loader for over 10 years. It was really efficient, but it started to fail, and it would cost more to replace the motherboard than to buy a whole new washer. Mm-hmm. Like most things that are all digitized and electronic.
Right.
So we went out and we ended up buying a Speed Queen, which is a commercial grade. It's not listed in your categories of washers that are eligible for a rebate, but it's even more water efficient than the LG that we had before. Mm-hmm. So I imagine there probably are other people in that category too that are looking at maybe Speed Queens that you haven't looked at, as far as which ones might be highly water efficient.
Sure.
And certainly if we've got laundromats in the area that are going through and having to replace their washers, if they have more water efficient choices, that would be beneficial to offer rebates to them too, is it not?
I think that's a great idea. I'll give you two answers. First is my hunch. This has not been tackled because several years ago, CEE, which is where we get our data for our efficiencies, put commercials on hold. And so there was no national standard that we could use. However, my second answer to this is, as I dug deeper, I looked at what do they use. There's a coefficient that they use. And so I think in preparing for the next fiscal year, and every year sort of I want to look at this, where have we gone? Do we need to make tweaks? I think that's a good addition to see, is there a reasonable way to include those using something like the coefficient that we already use for our residentials. So thank you for the idea.
Do we have any public comment? No. Councilwoman Furworth?
I just am so excited about the work that you're doing in this space, and I appreciate all the team that you recognized, that it takes a village to get stuff up and running and changed. But this is just really great work and is really going to help us in the future as a city. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. We'll move on to item 3F, presentation and discussion regarding a potential revision to City Code 2-1-8.
All right. So our last item for you today, bringing up a potential code revision for City Code 2.1.8 for your consideration, and see if it's something that you would be interested in and taking to the council full. So I was the council of as whole. So this is something that the water resource staff has been dealing with for a little bit, for quite a while. Definitely as long as I've been here and well before that. So I wanted to kind of explain the situation and then let you know some of the analysis that we've done and go over some potential resolution to that. So for background, City Code 2.1.8 is where we have in our code how we deal with water outside the city limits. For this particular discussion, I'm looking at specifically Part C1B, and that's what we call the single-family exemption. So the city does not serve water to outside the city limits at this point in time. To try to help out with various unique situations, the single-family exemption was worked into the code. This allowed for one single-family residential on one lot to connect to city water if they can connect to city sewer too. This seemed like a good provision to help with unique situations and individual owners who may be looking to connect into city water. There's a city water line right adjacent to them and sewer line. In the last little over 2.5 years that I've been here with the city, I've taken quite a few calls, probably over 100 at this point, divided equally amongst people who have either purchased a land or looking to purchase a land, or a realtor who is inquiring for a potential buyer. To this point, nobody's been able to utilize the exemption because our water lines were brought outside the city limits at various times in our long history, but our sewer lines were not for various reasons. So an exemption is there for to take care of unique cases and be available, but it's really not useful at this point in time. So, and I think we just discussed all of what was on this slide right here. Over the years, city water lines were brought outside the city limits. There was differences in code or policy. Maybe an IGA was struck up with the city in a certain water district or a potential or a subdivision. Water was brought out of city limits, or the water lines were brought out of city limits. Then the items changed, the regulations changed, the code changed, the policy changes. And some people were connected to that water and some people were not connected to the water. And so now we have kind of an area that kind of skirts around the city limits that's kind of deals in this limbo land of water, people having water services and others who don't. Again, we get about somewhere between 40 or 50 inquiries a year on outside city limits, and I haven't been able to, or I haven't found an example yet where somebody actually was able to connect to sewer and remedied that for themselves. So earlier this year, I got with our GIS department, a great group who can help us do so many different things. And in the GIS software and information that we have, what we asked them to do is we asked them to isolate city water lines that are outside the city limits, so we understood where they were at, and then find parcels that are adjacent to those water lines and identify those parcels. Then make some other data inquiries, parcels that have existing water surface agreements attached to them. There are already obligations that we have to serve those. We wanted to know about those. And then the last thing is I wanted to know what of those that don't have water service agreements in place, who is already being assumed to be in our designated assured water supply? Because in some ways we've already created a commitment to them. They don't have, they're outside city limits. They don't have a water service agreement, but we at one point had assumed that we would be serving them water when we put together our designation. So we accounted for that water. So that was kind of important to understand too. In your packet, and I'm sorry, in retrospect, it is hard to create this exhibit small enough. It's a 24 by 36 if you were to print it out. Hopefully you'll be able to use it as a PDF and zoom in a little bit. But we created this overall map, and this was the efforts that our GIS department took over. So you can kind of see along the perimeter the areas that were identified when GIS did this exercise I was just describing. And they identified the number of parcels that already have water service agreements, obligations in our mind, 262 parcels. And then the parcels that are adjacent to water lines outside the city limits but do not have a water service agreement, 213 parcels identified in the exercise. And then out of those 213, how many of them are we already accounting for in our DAWs? And that came out to 73. So I have a few different examples throughout the community, and I was just trying to give you an example of what we see and what they encompass. So the first example we have here is Vista del Cerro off of Iron Springs Road, about maybe half a mile west of Williamson Valley Road. Is a subdivision. It's broken into 2 units. And I'm going to try to see if I can do this here. All right. So the top here area is Unit 1, and Unit 1 has a water service application. Hence, all the parcels that are shown in there are shown in red, indicating that we have an obligation to serve water to these. The blue line that you can see in the roads is a water line, depicts a water line in this case. So you can see water lines were brought all the way into the subdivision to serve those parcels. The area to the south right here is Unit 2. And Vista del Cerro Unit 2, we've searched all our city records, and the HOA has searched their records. We cannot find a water service agreement for that second unit. Both of these subdivision maps, I think, were within almost a year of each other of being finalized in the mid to late 80s. And but there's just no water service agreement for that. So the obligations allow us to move water forward for everybody in Unit 1, but Unit 2 is subject to City Code 2.1.8. There's no sewer line anywhere reasonably close to this unit. So all of the lots there indicated in in yellow. A possibility of about 40 connections
So
in total.
Unit 1 is not sewered either.
No, there was no sewer back when the water service agreement was made. Sewer was not required. So out of the Unit 1 and Unit 2, 40 potential connections, or all of them in Unit 1 have obligations. 12 potential eligible in Unit 2. Out of the 12, 10 of them are actually in our assured water supply. So when that document was done, this plat map was looked at and said, okay, this meets the definition and requirements for being in the designated assured water supply, so we're going to include it in there. They probably noted too that there's water
lines. They all have
lines.
individual septics.
Yes, I would believe so. We have a number of representatives from the community here today. So, so all septic system. So, so this kind of shows you just kind of one example of what's there. Everything in green, all the dots in green show existing water connections to the city at this point in time. Going to the other side of town, just off of State Route 89 in the Granite Dales area, is Granite Gardens. This particular subdivision, which was kind of around the same time, I think it was the late 80s, might have been the early 90s, actually established an IGA with the city, and I think the town of Prescott was involved in some respect with this too, but and they had an IGA to bring that water line, kind of shown in the blue area there, into their subdivision. However, the IGA had no water commitment. There was no. It wasn't a water. It wasn't a water service agreement. It was an IGA to bring in a water line. So without a volume, without a number of connections or any of that type of information, we default to Code 2.1.8. For this particular subdivision, there are sewer lines within it. You can see them in the green area, but you can see that neither the water lines nor the sewer line goes to all the lots within the subdivision. So for this particular exercise, the yellow lots are shown as being adjacent to water lines. They can possibly be eligible if we do a revision to 2.1.8. I didn't include the other lots in there because there's just no water lines adjacent to them. They wouldn't be able to take advantage of this particular rule because they have to set a boundary somewhere. So we're looking at where existing water lines outside the city limits might reasonably accommodate water service because people are adjacent to them. So in this particular one, with that basic definition that I just gave you, you have 24 potential lots within Granite Garden. 21 of those are already assumed in our designation of assured water supply. So as you can see, it can get very complex. Each of the subdivisions around town have different and unique situations.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. Brian, when I was looking at this this weekend, this was the one, this map really blew my mind. I don't know how to think about, even if we wanted to do some things to make things right, this was a perfect example for me of an area that, there's so many properties that don't have yellow, don't have green, don't have whatever. And are we going to have to keep dealing with extending of water lines so that a whole area, an HOA or neighborhood all has water? What level of, this was the one that I went, there's the level of responsibility that the city could have for territory that is not in the city. And like you said, without even a water service agreement in place, this one I was like, I know people that live there and I love the people that live there, but sitting on this dais is all of this our responsibility, and how do you make things right?
Right.
Should we even? And so I just wanted to understand, since there's so much property here that has no color code whatsoever, I haven't heard people complaining, but are they? They're calling you all the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've probably gotten 10 calls from.
I would be too if I moved.
Gardens.
If I moved out and moved here and saw my neighbor had water and sewer and I'm literally across the street and I can't have it. It doesn't make sense. So I'll be honest. When I was doing the pre-work for this section, I do not have an opinion because I'm sorely missing the details of the history and the background for every single one of these considerations.
Yeah.
And if the city in any way failed, I have some heart to make some things right, but I absolutely agree with the city deciding not to be watering the entire freaking county. And so I don't want to go down that slippery slope. I appreciated that you brought this in small compartments, but each one of these probably has a sordid history that we need to better understand before we just blanket say we're in.
Yeah, and we can do that. We can go through, and it's going to be one of my recommendations if you're looking at moving this forward to the council, is doing another sweep through and
Well,
looking
Brian,
at
I
various
know
areas.
some of these developments were created at or near the time the AMA was created.
Yeah.
So the goal of trying to reach safe yield was just starting to be looked at and applied to some of these areas outside city limits. Now, I know about 3 or 4 years ago, I had a report done on how much it would cost to deliver sewer into some of these areas. We've got those areas up on Prescott Heights where they were told back in the late 70s that they would get sewer delivered. But when we looked at the cost of extending sewer lines into that heavily fractured granite material there, it was literally millions and millions of dollars. So there was never a contract. It was more of a verbal assurance that eventually sewer lines would be extended in there. But the cost is so prohibitive that it's never been done. So now that we have concerns about PFAs and PFOSs and some of the groundwater that's being where wells are being put in, and people are starting to be concerned about that. We have that huge problem over in Hokagon and that area where there used to be a foundry, and the PFA concentrations are extremely high. People want to be able to find a way to get away from that. And it's understandable. But by the same token, the cost for the city to be able to extend sewer lines is something that has to be looked at. Because not only do we deliver water, but we want to be able to find the effluent, be able to treat it, and then be able to recharge the aquifer with it. So by extending more water into these areas without sewer to be able to recover the effluent, we're causing the problems that we have to get worse. Although the individual homeowners in those areas, I'm sure, would be very happy to be able to get city water, but being able to abandon their wells or even consider paying to have sewer lines extended into their parcels would be so far out of their ability to do that. So it's quite a dilemma. And even if we were able to approve some of these, we create a very strong precedent for the next parcel that's sold to be expected to be able to have the same services extended to them. So it's quite a problem.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's exactly why this one is one of the examples. It gets complicated. I'm sure a lot of the neighbors that don't have the yellow designation would not be able to understand how some of their other neighbors have the water. But right now, it's that same situation. People call in and say, how can I possibly not have water? There's a water line through my subdivision. It was obviously there to serve me water. And I have to go through that whole history with all of them.
And we had that area up off of Iron Springs, I think it was Granite Oaks, where they wanted to be annexed into the city, and they had their own water and sewer services. But it had degraded so badly that it wouldn't meet the city standards. Mm-hmm. So they had to assess all their homeowners to bring those water and sewer lines up to city standards before we could consider them for annexation. Yeah. And that's what happened up there. Yeah. But at least they took individual responsibility for making sure that they could meet our standards and then be able to have a long-term commitment for water delivery and effluent recovery. So I think that's a situation. I think one of these maps here shows the Mountain Club area in the southern part of the city, where they have finally moved forward by creating their own domestic water improvement district, so they can also be responsible as a development for bringing up their water and sewer lines to our standards, so that all that lost water can finally be stopped.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a lot of different situations throughout the entire community. So it's a lot to think about. Next example here is Canyon Sites. This is just south of the Frontier Village shopping center, and it's the same typical situation here. Water lines throughout. Well more than half of the community already being served water on these water lines, with 16 potential eligible water line lots. Six of them already in our DAWs. So again, just examples of areas that we're dealing with. If we were to entertain something like this is kind of the basic requirements that I'm looking at coming up with. So they would be limited to existing homes and lots adjacent to existing city water mains. So how would we do that? We'd have to create a snapshot in time of what the water lines looked like at the time that the code was updated. The city would be able to determine if there's any insufficient pressure or capacity issues, and those we cannot, to the detriment of already existing customers, try to serve new ones in areas that just don't have capacity. As with all water in the city, the requester would be responsible for any infrastructure cost of connecting into the water line, and responsible for all those impact fees that are required. And any well that is on a property would have to be abandoned so that we could through ADWR, so we could attain groundwater allowances. So with this exercise and those 213 lots that were identified in it at this point in time, what the city would have to do, what the city would do with this is they would set aside 36 acre feet in order to service those lots based on the new code. 12 acre feet of the 36 is already accounted for as committed demand in the designation of assured water supply.
Does that 213 include Mountain Club?
No,
No.
no, it doesn't. So potential benefits to the city, collection of impact fees in this existing areas of existing water infrastructure. So we're not building additional water lines in these areas. Collection of a 30% surcharge, as we do for all areas outside the city limits. Potential conservation benefits. Due to the 30% surcharge, the city's tiered water rates, as we bring people onto as city customers, it tends to create better usage of the aquifer as a whole. Potential increase in groundwater allowances for any wells that are abandoned. That will allow an increase to our groundwater into our assured water supply. Reduction in staff time. These tend to be fairly complicated and usually take somewhere between 1 or 2 hours on each inquiry to ensure that we're giving the right answer and review. If we had something in place, we could reduce that staff time a little bit and concentrate on other things like long-term water management and conservation strategies. I look at this as a potential for a cleanup exercise. We have areas where we have city water lines outside the city limits connected to subdivisions that are only being half served or partially served. And it's people are kind of in limbo land. Their neighbors are served by water, but if they try to build a house there, they're not going to be able to be served by water. It's a potential to clean up those areas and kind of have an understanding too from our long-term strategies and our demand management strategies. If we know we're setting aside this water for them, then we know it's set aside for them. We don't, we can take that into account as we're doing our long-term water management, our strategies on how we're gonna use our water, and we know what is set aside. So that's what it's kind of part of that cleanup effort for me. We're not gonna be in a situation where maybe 5 years down the road, the rules change again. And now these people are all getting water, but we weren't accounting for it at the time because that's not the rules that were in place. So it gives us a better understanding of our long-term water. So if you want to explore this further, there's some things I still need to do. I really need to go through these maps one more time. As we developed this exercise, we probably had 4 iterations of that map I gave you that changed all the time because the water service agreements, 70, 60, 50 years old, expired, didn't expired. Oh my gosh. I need to go through it one more time with the comb. Make sure that the numbers are right. GIS did a fantastic job for me to get to this level where I felt like I could give you some good foundational data of what we're coming up with. I would go over it one more time and make sure the numbers are really, really tight before we move forward. We look at some updated code language on how we could do this. And then really
Are
important,
some of these developments eligible for annexation?
some of them could be eligible for annexation. I'd have to
put
look
in,
at that.
sewer lines first.
Now that's a good point. Yeah, exactly. The one, I guess now thinking about it from that standpoint, a lot of them may not be eligible for annexation. Most of the areas we're talking about don't have
individually
sewer.
or as a group, say we want to be annexed, so we would be eligible for water for everybody in this development, but it's going to cost us a few $1 million to extend sewer lines.
Yeah.
But if they were annexed, their water rates would go down by 30%. They're paying a 30% upcharge. Mm-hmm. So they could utilize the savings in water as a cost to pay for a long-term, maybe a loan that they could collectively put together to pay for the extension of the sewer lines. It might make some financial sense from that perspective.
Yeah, I think it would be a case-by-case basis, right? It might be a way for some of these communities to definitely get in. Granite Garden seems like that's a potential. They have sewer lines in the area already, but then other areas might be a half a mile away from a sewer line, and everything you were talking about, Mayor, before, the hard granite, topography, potential lift stations. Yeah, for them, it might just not ever pencil out.
Sounds like Diamond Valley.
Yeah. So yeah, and then what we'd really want to do is we'd really want to create some really, really good tracking tools that start off if council ever chose to take consideration on this. We need a snapshot in time. We need to talk to owners. This wouldn't be a new water gold mine to go and split all your lots, because now water is available. But with our GIS tools, we can overlay a snapshot in time of what the parcels look like at the time that the code was revised. That way we can overlay it and we can let people know, well, your lot is 3 lots now, you're eligible for 1. There was, at the time you were 1 lot. And make it easy for staff to be able to figure this out and do it well. We wouldn't want to take a lot of time in doing that. We want to make sure we're doing it well, because if we get unorganized or haphazard in this effort, we could end up giving more water than we intended to. That's not the objective here. The objective is to look at areas that may have been in limbo land because the policies have changed over time, and where we can clean some things up and then move forward. That's all I have for you today. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Could the collective impact fees be utilized to be able to help fund extension of sewer lines?
Wow. I don't have an answer for that. I would put that one on to get back with you. I'm not sure if anybody here has an answer on that one right off the bat. Maybe we'll address that and get back to you, Mayor.
Do we have any public comment on this?
We do. Howard Mechanic.
Mr. Mayor and other members, and I appreciate your interest in looking at this on a case-by-case basis. Like in the past, various parties have asked for help from the city, and I think the city should be able to help people. But in the past, the city hasn't looked at are these people going to help the city? How are we going to get some kind of an exchange going on here? Something close to an equal exchange. As you know, if we don't get effluent from a property, we're losing the water. Compared to properties that have effluent, we can capture 60% approximately. That 60% be captured and reused, and then get another capture and reused, it comes out to 150. It approaches 150 acre feet for every 100 that you supply initially, which means you can have 2.5 homes on the same amount of water that you're providing for one home that has no effluent recovery. 2.5 homes versus one. Well, that doesn't matter if you have a lot of water available. Now, why do these people want city water? Maybe they could have a good well. Maybe they can't. But they know that their property, and Brian talked about real estate agents contacting him. Ask a real estate agent, I've got this property here that has water, city sewer. Here over here is another property. What's the difference in value? They're going to get their property doubled in value by the city trying to help them out. If the city wants to help them out and they're getting double the value, what should they give to the city? Let's say you have a property, Mr. Mayor, in the city limits that has, and you want to sell that property and the real estate agent comes up to you, and the real estate agent says, well, I've got another property I'm looking at in one of these developments over here. If I build there, I don't have to pay $6,000 in sewer impact fees because the city's going to give that property.
30 seconds, Howard.
Yeah. The city's going to give them water. I don't have to pay $6,000 in a sewer impact fee for that property. And I don't have to pay $50 a month in sewer if I compare your property to that one. So I want you to drop your price on the property you have in the city limits to match that price. Thank you.
David Shingledecker.
Yeah, I know the deputy city clerk didn't mention it, but public comment is limited to 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is David Shingledecker. Put it up higher. Okay. I'm the president of the Vista del Cerro Lot Owners Association, and I'm the owner of 3 of the lots that are in that district. 40 years ago, that development was built with the understanding there would be city water. We put in 8-inch lines, we got fire hydrants, we have a city pumping station on our property to provide water.
Did you say 4 or 40?
40 years ago.
40 years ago.
Several of the owners behind me have been owners for 30 years, 35 years. They bought it a long time ago with the view of future development. I mean, mine, I was going to give them to my kids to build here. So we didn't find out about this. I guess the amendment was March 24. We first were alerted in March 25 that, oh, gee, these lots can no longer get water. 2 lots that were in escrow fell out of escrow immediately. A 3rd lot that was beginning development fell out of development immediately. If you go out and look, this is very rocky, fractured granite up and down hills. It's very difficult to build in there. So we have an issue now of property values dropping 15 to 20,000 each. Some probably gone to zero, because I know at least 2 of the lots, it's impossible to put a well in. You can't have a well and a septic tank. It just can't be done. And so there's been a financial impact. The long-term owners who are going to have to figure out what to do about that. And, you know, they're all talking about we're going to go to the county and drop our taxes. So it's more than just I'm going to come up and buy a lot now and go to poor Brian and say, give me water. And I've owned the lot for 35 years, planning to develop it, and you suddenly tell me, gee, you can't have water. So we think it was an unintended consequence of the amendment in 2024. Really do. You didn't mean to reach back to long-term owners that have been around, I think, and suddenly say, too bad, go drill a well or you don't get water. And it's impossible for us to put a sewer in. I mean, if you send somebody out, the cost, the pumping stations would be horrendous. So we support what Brian has brought forth to you. We think it makes sense. I want to take my last few seconds to, first of all, I want to compliment Brian. Brian, the water department has been beautiful in this. Even though we don't like what they've told us, they've been professional, clear, and precise to help us understand what the rules are. So again, thank you, Brian. But we like obviously we got 10 lots, which are covered by the DAWs. Each lot has a water box on the lot. I mean, it's tapped into the water main. There's a water box.
You have 30 seconds.
The intent always was there to give at least Vista del Cerro Phase 2, water. And most of the lots, most of the houses have already been built. So we ask for your consideration. The trouble is let's study this for a very long time. You got 10 owners, some who needed to sell now, they needed the money, and some who wanted to build, who are today impacted. So thank you very much for your time and your consideration.
Les Fournier.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate your allowing us to present the case. I also am an owner in Vista del Cerro, Lot 43, Phase 2. Phase 2 has a number of lots right now that had not been developed. I bought my lot with the intent of developing 35 years ago. Bought it directly from the developer, who at that time used the term, it has all city utilities, with the exception, of course, of the need for a septic, because you don't have sewer. At any rate, the intent was to build, which we presented to a local designer for the house, a local builder for actually building the house. The bottom line was a series of events that occurred. The builder passed away. I sat on the designs for a while. The next thing you know, a couple of years had gone by and there was a downturn in the economy. I said, okay, I've got to hold off. Well, I ended up buying a house in retirement in the city of Prescott, off of Copper Basin, and have been paying taxes that way to the city with, I had hoped, was going to be Vista del Cerro being incorporated at some time into the city, which did not happen. But that was longer term view. At any rate, at this time, I have neighbors who have water because they developed their property in the interim. I cannot sell that property without water. That is the bottom line. And that's true of any other vacant lot right now that has not been developed in Phase 2. I am asking that you give consideration to Brian's perspective. I think it's an appropriate approach, and hopefully it can be, in his words, taken care of in a manner that would be appropriate for the city also. And that's about it, all I have to say. That it? I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Larry Fagan.
Yeah, hello, my name's Larry Fagan. My dad, Phil Fagan, was the developer of Vista del Cerro. And at the time, I lived up here, again, about 40 some years ago, and I wasn't involved in any of the details, but he was very active in trying to get it hooked to sewer, and was disappointed because obviously if it has city sewer, you can sell the lots for more money, and a lot of people are scared off if you have private septic. So that was tried at the time, and it didn't work. All of those lots were always marketed and sold as being hooked to city water. And when you look at the offsites, city water department had to come by and inspect all those lines, the T's, the water meters going, or water meter boxes going in. So the city was well aware of what was going on and approved that. And so just because you can't find an agreement, if you go back 40 years, and I've got some stories, things were done, I don't know, a little more lax. In a lot of ways, that was really nice. There were some really good things that happened, but obviously then you end up with these things this many years later. But again, when you look, people built their houses, got hooked up to city water. To me, the commitment to provide phase 2 with water by the city was very clear. Anyway, and I do appreciate the work. It looks like they've gone through things to get a handle on the scope of the problem and have come up with a solution. And so I'm in full agreement with that. So thank you.
Jim Cooley.
My name is Jim Cooley, and I own lot number 49 in Vista del Cerro Estates there. We purchased that lot in 2005 with the intent of building on that property, but the housing market kind of went crazy about that point, and we were not able to do that. So we've held on to it for quite a while, and have finally decided to sell it. And I was one of the ones that was in escrow. We were within probably 30 days of closing when this all went crazy. So we are now out, potential sale and everything else that we had planned on doing with this lot. We had plans for it originally, which we are not going to use, but somebody might. But anyway, the value of that property, literally since the passage, since you guys voted in that, last year to make it mandatory for the sewer hookups, has reduced the property value to zero. I can't even give it away now, and I feel that's not right when there are water meter boxes already there. The people on houses next to mine have water, but on my lot I can't get water. So I really hope that you would consider doing what Brian and his people have suggested to try to correct this problem in the Vista del Cerro Estates area. And I also want to compliment Brian and his people for the work they've been doing. They've been trying to help us out with this all along. So that's about all I have to say.
That's it.
Well, this is certainly a difficult dilemma to try to come up with a fair and equitable solution. As we become more and more controlled by state policies, as the effort to try to reach safe yield within the Prescott AMA becomes more and more rigid. Our ability to make sure that we can recover effluent, treat it, and recharge the aquifer as much as possible, I think becomes more and more important. And I know that I did read one of the foundational documents with Vista del Cerro. I think there was a development agreement, but there wasn't a water service agreement. Is that what you're saying?
There was we found a water service agreement for phase 1, but it did not extend to phase 2.
Right. Yeah, I think that was the agreement that I reviewed. So I think there's a variety of issues here. Not only the policies that we currently have in place, the policies that were recently adopted, the creation of the AMA way back 40-some years ago, and then a rather poorly crafted development agreement that I think some of the property owners never saw. So I think some of the due diligence or the requirement that some of that information be included in their purchase documents kind of gave them a false impression of what might happen to the property that they purchased and what they were expecting to be able to do in the future. So I agree, back before the AMA was formed or shortly thereafter, there were a lot of almost handshake agreements on how property could be developed and sold. And now they're at the mercy of those kind of unenforceable, poorly crafted legal documents. But I think it's really important that anything that we continue to consider has to be looked like as a potential annexation so that the recovery of effluent can be included, because it's so critically important now and in the future. That's a real difficulty. So maybe if we can put together some of the questions I had as far as being able to possibly have a development that could be looked at for future annexation, being able to utilize some of the impact fees to help cover some of the costs, look at some of the reductions in water rates to help cover the cost to extend sewer lines into these areas, then there might be a solution. So I think we need some more study on this before we can move it forward to the council for a broad recommendation or acceptance.
Certainly.
Councilwoman, for
I agree with.
Sir, could I ask a question? What is the criteria for annexation?
It's laid out in state statute. We'll circle back next time with all that information for consideration.
Okay. Yeah, because I'd be very interested in knowing what that is and what the impact would be. Thank you.
I fully agree with what you said, and I do think some of these subdivisions warrant themselves for potentially annexation if the owners are interested in that. The stuff I saw on this map, Brian, down at the bottom there, that is Mountain Club, and they're forming their own water improvement district. So they may not be included in scope of this, but those are all solutions. Annexation, forming your own domestic water. I mean, there's a couple of things other than us just pursuing the recommendation that you gave. And then I do think that, there's always some unique situations with the past that potentially a neighborhood needs to be looked at. I personally don't understand if the water's down the middle of the street, one side has it, the other side doesn't. I get that, but there's sections here as I'm looking at these maps you've given us. Well, what about the lot next to it, and the lot next to that, and the lot next to that, and you start going down the slippery slope of now we're going to extend water systems. I can't go there when they're not within our municipality. So that's what I'm struggling with. So I like the annexation idea a lot.
Any comments, Councilman Cambochi?
I like annexation a lot.
Okay, Brian, I think you have a direction to pursue. So I don't think that we're in a position to make a recommendation to approve or deny to the council until we have some more information that we've indicated would be valuable.
Okay, sounds good. I got my direction here, and we'll bring it back to this subcommittee in the future.
Very good. This meeting is adjourned.